続きまして、銀行間リコンサイルと決済と題しまして、イタリア銀行協会の銀行間プログラム、スプンタにつきましてご紹介いたします。最初に R3 社のブルーノ様より、スプンタの概要をプレゼンしていただき、その後にイタリア銀行協会のアナスタシアさんのプレゼンの録画を流します。ブルーノさん、please start.
はじめまして、ブルーノです。よろしくお願いします。So, of course, I'm not Silvia Attanasio. Unfortunately, Silvia couldn't be here today with us. So I'm going to give a short introduction to this amazing use case that we have in Italy. And then we'll play the recording of the presentation from Silvia. So I'm very excited to be here to introduce this use case for three reasons. So the first one is that I'm from Italy, as you can tell from my accent. And so I'm very proud of this use case because you will see how the whole Italian banking system has come together and have created an amazing solution, which is a good application of blockchain. The other reason is that banking, modern banking, was invented in Italy in the 13th and 14th centuries. So words like bank come from the Italian banco, which means counter. So counter is where people in Florence, in Genoa, and Venice used to keep their money and do rudimental forms of banking. And the word bankruptcy, bankrupt, comes from the Italian banca rotta, which means broken counter, because when a banker went out of business, the authorities would smash his counter so that people couldn't deal with that bankrupted banker anymore. And so we don't have time to go through the history of banking, but fast forward to the 21st century, we see that the Italian banking system is now at the forefront of innovation with blockchain, because in Italy it's a bit different from other places. There aren't just like 4 or 5 big banks. There are, in reality, about 200 banks. And so it's kind of very difficult for these banks to keep everyone on the same page. So this solution that Silvia is presenting in a moment is a reconciliation solution between the Italian banks. And the third reason why I'm very excited about this use case, which is the most important, is because it is a very good example of where you can successfully apply blockchain for 2 reasons. So blockchain doesn't solve any new problems. Blockchain solves old problems in new ways. So if you want to look for where to apply blockchain successfully, you need to understand how we used to solve those problems up to now. And so in 2 ways. One is through trusted intermediaries. So in the past, when you need to keep everyone on the same page, like banks in this example, you can see on the left-hand side, what you usually do, you pick a trusted intermediary, the kind of black icon in the middle, which is represented by those 2 icons at the bottom, where there is one ledger which is managed by one entity, the person with the speakerphone, with the headset. But the problem with this trusted intermediary model is that the participating banks are kept in the dark. They don't know what's in the centralized solution. They really have to trust blindly the trusted intermediary. So we'll see how we can do that in a better way with blockchain. And this is the other way we used to solve the same problem, with multiple bilateral agreements. So instead of having a centralized actor like trusted intermediaries, now all those banks have bilateral agreements between them. And as you can see from this icon, when the number of participating entities grows, all those bilateral agreements grow exponentially. And in those bilateral agreements, there is one entity that keeps the record, and they have access to the information, but their counterpart is kept in the dark. Okay? So as you can see from the icon in the bottom, there is no centralized ledger. So in the early days of blockchain, we believed that blockchain was about disintermediation. It turns out that blockchain is not about disintermediation. Blockchain is about reintermediation. So you can do your job as a trusted intermediary in a much better way by replacing your technology stack with a better technology, which is blockchain, but by keeping your very valuable function, which is the coordinating function among participants, which is essential, which is the lady with the headset. So in both cases, you can replace a centralized solution of a trusted intermediary or many bilateral agreements that are very hard to manage and to scale with a solution on the right-hand side where you delegate and you replace, as you can see from left to right, you replace bilateral agreements with a blockchain, or you replace a centralized database with blockchain, and then you keep the essential function, which is the coordination between the participant banks in this case. And that is exactly what happened in Italy. So in Italy with ABI, which was run by the lady who's going to give you the presentation in a minute, was the central trusted intermediary that came to us and said, look guys, I'm managing this system of banks with bilateral agreements, and it's really, really hard to do. So I want to replace this solution with a blockchain solution. And so they acted as a trusted intermediary only from a coordinating perspective. The technology was replaced by blockchain, which is distributed. That was very good because for them, it meant that there was only one entity that was evaluating alternative solutions. So ABI evaluated several blockchain solutions and they picked R3 and Corda, and then they worked with us. So for us, it was very good because we didn't have to work with hundreds of banks in Italy. We had only one counterpart to work with in Italy. So again, they kept their valuable function, but they replaced the technology stack with blockchain, which is more secure and that has other advantages. So the last reason why I'm very excited about this is because it was done in collaboration with Entity Data Italy. So Japan was a big part of the success story of this Punta solution in Italy. So I think we can play the video now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for asking this presentation of the Spunta DLT project. I am Silvia Attanasio. I'm Head of Innovation at the Italian Banking Association and President at Abilab.
Hello, everybody, and thank you also for my side. So I'm Francisco Spadafora, Head of Blockchain in EML in Entity Data, and have been working several years on this project together with Silvia and all the team. Just a brief introduction about our companies and who are representing today. So as I said, I'm working for Entity Data, which is a company of the Entity Group that, of course, is in Japan. I think it's very, very, very well known. So we are working on blockchain since several years, and especially on the Spunta project, which is one of the biggest and most important projects for us. We have a global team supporting financial institutions on the adoption of enterprise and private ecosystems using DLT, from the strategy to the operations. And today you will see an example with Spunta on how we did this.
Yes, just a few words also from my side. The Italian Banking Association is a voluntary non-profit organization which works for the entire banking sector in Italy. We thought in the beginning of the blockchain and DLT era, I would say that the association, and this means ABI and Abilab, can represent a sort of natural ecosystem where banks can interact with each other and collaborate in order to build an ecosystem-wide project. This is where Abilab came out. Abilab is a research and innovation center promoted by ABI itself that provides research and experiments across different topics in the IT domain. So in 2017, we started working also on DLT and blockchain, and quite soon the Spunta process came out as a possible good way to experiment and to test DLT potential. If we move to the next slide, please. When we started with this project, we had a sort of double perspective. On one side, we wanted to experiment and to use an innovative technology hands-on, not only studying its potential, but understanding if this potential can be transferred in the real world and show its its real potential in reshaping an existing process. At the same time, the idea was to create an infrastructure owned and managed by banks that can be reused across different use cases and different initiatives. So Spunta was the first train using these railways, but the idea in the future was to reuse this infrastructure with several trains. Thank you. Spunta is an Italian word. We still use it because, I don't know, because we like it basically, but is a process that rules the reconciliation of bilateral accounts. It is a sort of Nostra and Vostra account that is used in particular in Italy, and internationally the same process is managed through SWIFT messages and the exchange of SWIFT messages. This process generally is run by back offices and aims to clear every mismatch in a double entry bookkeeping. This process was governed by an interbank agreement issued by ABI, whose first formulation dates back on 1978. And after so long, more than 40 years, the executive committee of ABI approved the new version of the interbank agreement that moved Spunta from tapes, literally tapes, to an online DLT shared by banks. The process has the aim, and you will see much better with Francisco's description of the characteristic of the application, but has these two different phases: the upload of data from each of the banks, and then the work made on solve the matches, which happens both automatically thanks through a shared and documented algorithm that automatically matches the vast majority of movements. And then there is a manual activities which is still run by operators within the back offices of banks, but which now is transparent and shared by the two parties. But I leave the floor to Francisco to show you and describe the characteristics of Spunta.
Yes, thank you, Silvia. And yes, I will show you a little bit some also screenshots of the application. One of the main activities, of course, of all the infrastructure of the application we have developed, it's about data loading. So banks are providing their data to the system, which is doing, of course, and executing the matches. There has been a really big work on the standardization. So all the banks are using the same standard to send the data to the blockchain nodes. And then, of course, as I said, the smart contracts are doing all the matching activities. Here you can see some of the reports that are generated about the data that has been uploaded. The second step after the data is uploaded is about matching. There are several rules to match movements, and these, of course, facilitate the work of the operators, who only have to solve and to match the ones that are not the movements that they don't have a match. All these activities, as I said, are totally automatically and managed by the smart contracts behind the application. There is also an interesting point, with an interesting feature, which is the investigation. So for some movements where operators cannot find a match, or there is some points, some problems, something that has been identified, the operators can open an investigation on that movement and talk also with the counterparty, so with the other bank which is involved in that movement, and try to solve, let me say, the problem. So both writing also notes, so they have the possibility to communicate with notes that can be, of course, that are visible for both the parties, and also with private notes, which means that are only visible internally to the bank. So we are using the blockchain also for a communication between the banks. Last point, which is really important, is about the reporting. So Spunta, of course, because it's a reconciliation platform, at the end there is a report which is used, let me say, to decide also some to pay some interest between the banks and many other actions. All these reports are created directly from the platform with just one button. So also from this side, there was a really big improvement on how, let me say, things happened before. And just to conclude, so these are the benefits so that we have achieved using the platform. So reducing operational risk, just think that we have moved Spunta from a monthly reconciliation to a daily reconciliation. So there is an operational risk reduction, of course, an increased quality of the match, a more transparent process. So the stakeholders, they have full visibility because of the transactions are shared between the stakeholders that are involved. There is a full transparency on which is the status of the reconciliation, of the matching, of the investigations, etc., etc. As I said, there is a daily workflow. Everything is managed daily, and a good and a better user-friendly interface for the operators. Just think that this software and this application is used by mostly all the Italian banks, and that means also a lot of operators with different, of course, backgrounds and different also computer laptops. So the user experience is also a really important point we have where we have been working. One question that a lot of people ask us is why DLT for a project like this, and which blockchain then? You know, like after we say, okay, yes, let's use a DLT, why a private blockchain like Corda and not a public one? Well, the main reasons why the decision was to use Corda, and take in consideration that during the feasibility study, there was a benchmark between the several blockchains. So this decision was taken with a comparison and a well-known decision between the stakeholders was, first of all, the possibility to have data visibility between only the stakeholders that are involved in the transactions, the possibility of having archiving feature. And we will see later this is a really important feature, especially because of the amount of data that this project is managing. The possibility to have an enterprise version and a support, in this case, of course, from R3. The performance that were also very, very important. And as I say, the native point-to-point channels to talk between the several stakeholders. Of course, the idea also to use a private permission DLT, as Silvia said at the beginning, was because of creating an infrastructure that can be reusable in the future for many other use cases without having to create every time a new infrastructure. So there are already nodes, there is already a process of archiving, already contracts, already a lot of things that can be reused. And from the, let me say, the next projects, you can just focus on the application layer only on that. So this is the answer, let me say, to this question that we receive a lot of times. Last two things from my side. It's this project. It was a really big challenge. So moving close to 100 banks in production means that we have to test an infrastructure with millions of transactions, and this is what we did. So in October 2019, we tested 200 million transactions on the application because we wanted to be sure that performance were okay. So let me say, in a world where we see a lot of, let me say, press release with like few transactions, so we tested this application and Corda and all the different layers and technology that we were using a lot to be sure that we were able to achieve the results that we now achieved in production. And from the other side, we also involved the banks in a user acceptance test. So you see there are some photos where they tried the application with different use cases and with different test cases because the involvement of the community, of the users for us was key. So trying to reproduce before moving in production real situations to be sure. Also because we were the first one moving a big project like this in production. So we needed to be sure, of course, that everything was working okay. And here you see some of the main challenges we faced during this project. So privacy, how to manage the data that is on chain, the ones that are off chain, being GDPR compliant, which is the European regulation about privacy. The other point is about archiving. So we have implemented an archiving feature to remove from the ledger the historical data. And this is a really important feature for us. Otherwise, the database and the ledger will grow infinitely. And as you saw, this process is there since long time, and I think will stay in there for a long time. So we cannot put all the data in the node. So we have developed all the archiving features. Performance, we already talked about this, but the other point is it's about the continuous improvement. So we started this project with Corda 2. We moved and migrated to Corda 3.3. Then from Corda 3.3, we migrated to Corda 4. And now we are working on the Corda 5 migration. So it was a long journey, improving, also evolving and managing, let me say, the evolution of this infrastructure that we have done. And about the governance model, Silvia, I let you continue.
Yes, I always say that governance is a real key issue when talking about distributed ledger technologies, because The distribution implies the involvement of several actors. No one can benefit of a DLT by all alone, I would say. It is a collaborative project by nature. So the governance must be very strong, very clear, transparent, and distributed itself. So this is the reason why you find at the top of this pyramid the group of banks, the business networks, because it is a sort of democratization of the use and the design and the evolution of the technology. And what is called the business network governor, so the role for Rabilab is the second top level of this pyramid. It's not the first one. Abilab acts as a coordinator, as a facilitator of the relationship between banks, also simplifying the relationship with the different providers. And in the next slide, you will see the structure of contracts that are behind this project. Two key things: banks has to sign two different contracts. You can find here them as contract number 1 and contract number 2. One is related to the use of the infrastructure and the application, and another one is related to the management of the node. What is very interesting is that at the beginning, 99 banks, now 94 due to M&A operations in Italy, they signed all exactly the same contract. No personalization, no specific policies to be adopted and to adapt within the contract framework, because we are selling a single application which is shared between different actors. There are no differences in the way this application is installed or the instances of the same of different characteristics of the application. So this has been also another challenge of the project. We discussed the contract with the 18 legal department of 18 different banks. We worked with them, analyzing clause by clause all the different characteristics that we would agreeing on in the contract. In the next slide, I think we can see also the timeline of the project, which has been quite short in some way, but also we had some specific phase which has been necessary because we were at the initial phase of DLT. When we selected Corda in September 2017, it was at its 0.9 open source version, and no enterprise was yet available. So we had a quite long phase, which is the phase 2A, which has been dedicated to the performance improvement and to the ability to manage such a huge amount of data. When we define the migration plan and the final date after which we would have been in production, I think it has been very useful to define very in advance those key milestones of the project and to respect the date, even though we are Italian, so we used to not respect the plan, but this time, despite a pandemic, we respected all the single data. What is interesting as an ex-post note is that during the work, we encountered relevant obstacles, technical problems, and doubts about the application of different rules. But in all these situations, we had and we benefit from an open and transparent dialogue, both between the banks and with the Bank of Italy. So if I may, just a humble suggestion, we don't have to be scared of the obstacles and the issues we will find, but it's always important to be able to solve them all together, because, as I said, it is a distributed technology. It implies a distributed governance, so we share everything, the good and the bad part of the project. In the next slide, we can see the keys, the migration plan. So as we had to migrate 100 banks, we divided them into waves. And the piloting banks started as first on March 2020, then another group of banks on May 2020, and the last group in October. Now these are some figures for Spunta and the Abilab chain. We have now 91 nodes, more than 600 users, and we processed approximately 200 million transactions per year. The nodes are all managed by Nexi, but they are geographically distributed across 9 different cities across Italy. In the next slide, I think we sum up the key success factors. I would not cover all. I would just say briefly that we benefited from a long-term strategy and commitment, which has been the strong part of the story, whilst flexibility and responsiveness has been the smooth part to enable the transformation. Thanks to the use of a private permission DLT, we had the possibility to move an entire process. So banks switched off their pre-existing systems, and now they work only on a DLT-based application. So we are not just notarizing the output of a process, but we share information through the bilateral channels. This enhances very much transparency and trust among parties. I would also say that we selected Corda and R3 because we were able to have a strong and stable and collaborative dialogue also with them. From the very beginning, they were also being available in answering to our questions, to solve our issues, to understand how to improve the platform, because as sometimes Richard Gender Brown says, there is no prize for purity in the model of DLT. Here you can see a platform which is designed to match with market needs, not match with a perfect design, let me say. And I think you can go through the other success factors in these slides. I leave to Francisco to show how we are working to move and to evolve Spunta to have it available also to manage a cross-country reconciliation.
Yes, thank you, Silvia. And we are concluding the last slide. So, and we want to leave you with this. Of course, we did this project, really big project in Italy, but the next step was, okay, what we can do to support other countries and other ecosystems that they want to do and experiment and use also the experience and also the blockchain, the application we already have. So one of the ideas was, and this is what we are working now, is to move the Italian reconciliation process to an international level, working with the several other associations and the several other countries. So that's why we are moving Spunta to an international interbank reconciliation. The main purpose is, of course, as you can see here, reduce operational risk, the OPEX costs increase the matching rate, operational efficiency, and improve the transparency. So for, of course, the international one. So here the process is to move the reconciliation that today is based on Swift MT 950 messages to the blockchain solution, integrating it, as I said, with the different ecosystems. So of course, also in Japan, we are totally open to integrate and to do also an experimentation between the Italian already working solution with another country, and then of course integrate all of this. We already started in 2023 the development of this feature, and we are working, of course, to move it live in the next months. So it's something coming, something already developed. So we are totally open, let me say, to support and to extend Spunta to other countries like Japan. And also we are really, we as you saw, we are really passionate about this topic. So also to support and to have any kind of conversation about the experience of this project, which was a really big challenge, but that we won, and now it's in production since almost 4 years now. So thank you very much.